Everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm Brent Hoberman, co-founder and chairman of Founders Forum, Founders Factory, First Minute Capital, and Made.com. Founders Forum, for those that don't know us, is a global community of the top tech founders, corporate CEOs, and senior investors. While we can't meet in person, not for very soon, we'll be able to meet in person. We're still hoping to do that in September, but right now we are bringing a series of FF Live. So FF Live, as you know, you're here, and we have world-class speakers such as we have today, and it continues our mission to engage, inspire, and connect across the global tech ecosystem. With today's session, I've known these glorious panelists for a while. Tim before, even pre-Ocado, but I remember the meeting at our pool table in lastminute.com. Just as Webvan went bust, and I, like many, were thinking this is bold, as it proved to be. And Steve, I'm delighted to be partnering with Marks and Spencer's, the digital first Marks and Spencer's, at Founders Factory. Ashley was reminding me we'd last spoken about Made.com not so long ago, and Ashley Armstrong, as you know, is retail and M&A editor of The Times. She reports on the rapidly changing retail landscape involving large and small high street chains, online retail, supermarkets, luxury brands, and consumer goods companies. She also assists in the business desk team covering corporate takeovers. Ashley, over to you.
Grand. All right. Well, hi, afternoon, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. So I was particularly delighted to be part of this because I think it's such an interesting time for online retail, particularly, and since the crisis, obviously, we've seen this rapid acceleration, as we know, partly forced because all the shops are shut and you have no other option but going online. But particularly in the grocery side of things is where we've really noticed it. We saw, obviously, delivery slots become like gold dust in the early days. And so I thought we could kind of open up maybe and speak to Tim, because he was kind of at the forefront of dealing with how to meet that unprecedented, which seems like an overused word at the moment, but that unprecedented spike that I think, somebody said, if you thought that online delivery bosses could see their business double in 12 weeks, they would never have believed it. But Tim, how did you see that kind of early day of the crisis, and how did you react to that?
So actually, the demand was was much more extraordinary than a doubling. So I think at one point we were seeing probably demand of 10x anything we'd ever seen before. We were seeing web traffic at 100x anything we'd ever seen before. And so the initial challenge was really that we'd spent 19 or 20 years building a business trying to attract customers into the shop. And various things have been coded and some of them have been hard coded to kind of manage a flow that we thought we understood. And then suddenly you were seeing this deluge of customers coming in, both existing loyal customers, kind of existing customers who we hadn't necessarily seen in a while, who were usually infrequent, and new customers, all trying to kind of barge through the door at the same time. And so initially we had to very quickly take steps to keep the infrastructure running with 100 times the number of customers coming into the store. So we put a queuing software on the front, and then we brought
website for a bit, didn't you? And that attracted a lot of attention, but it was to recode it, I understand.
Well, actually, correct, actually, but what really actually happened was we sell slots at that stage up to 3 weeks out, and we had sold them all, and we had a queue of over 350,000 people trying to come on the site that was taking 3 hours for them to get on the site. And when they got there, they could just discover that all our slots were full. Yeah. And so we thought there really was just no point in them being there. And so we took the site down for a couple of days, literally to try and kind of save the customers. We didn't ever shut. We were still delivering record volumes every day, but those orders were already placed. Right. And so we literally just took it down while we were developing more code, because what we wanted to do is to have control over who got access to the slots. So that was a combination of better serving those that were on the shielded vulnerable list, the government's, kind of most vulnerable people in society, as well as using our capacity for our existing loyal customers, because we felt very strongly that our existing loyal customers are why we have the capacity, why we own the robots or the vans, or why we've employed the team members. And so we wanted to protect them rather than just let people that were kind of more persistent and kind of charging in front of them. And we were seeing peaks of tens of thousands of customers logging on at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking that if we released the next day, then they could get it before anyone else woke up and stuff like that. So
I think
we spent
the Glastonbury queuing system at one stage, that kind of competition to kind of get the delivery slot, wasn't it?
So we went to one of these queuing software companies and we put their software live, and they said, they'd never see, they could handle any queue size that they could imagine. And 2 hours after it went live, we took their whole business down because there aren't people coming on. So then they had to scale up their business. And then eventually we moved to something that was even more scalable. So, the numbers were vast. And I think in the 1 hour when Boris announced the lockdown, we saw as many customers come to the site individually in that hour as we'd had in the previous quarter.
Right.
So scale was immense. So what did we manage to do? That we've been reporting numbers of kind of sales up 40%. So having been growing at 10, 11, 12%, we moved up and have managed to extract 40% sales growth through a combination of measures inside the business. But most importantly, we've been able to protect our most, our long-standing loyal customers, as well as those that were infrequent customers, but who are the most vulnerable in society. So we were able to protect the two groups and deliver outstanding service. Whereas I think some other methods of doing this were even more stretched with issues with, for example, if you were store picking, it was an enormous challenge because within an hour of opening the shops at one point, all the stock had gone. And then you're walking around with a trolley trying to pick up with a customer's list and there's no product there. So our model was still incredibly and remains incredibly in demand. And we even now, if I release 5,000 slots to the general public now, they would be sold out in 15 minutes.
Wow. Okay. And I mean, what kind of tangible things? I remember Duncan, your CFO, talking about simple tangible things like taking out water bottles because that was adding weight to the delivery vans, and if you were able to strip that out, you could do 6,000 more deliveries. But any other examples of kind of the tangible side of things of how you were able to meet that capacity?
Yeah, well, we also took out frozen water, also known as ice, and that gave us another 3,000 orders as well. So our kind of view on that was clearly people want bottled water, but actually there is water in the tap. And we saw this as a bit of a time of national crisis, and we wanted to get as much food to as many people as possible. And although we actually delivered less orders than we were delivering before, because the order size went up so dramatically, but we knew that we were serving more households because our customers were telling us that they were shopping for family, for parents, for neighbors, for other people as well. So we were just doing whatever we could to try and get as much food out into our customers' communities as possible.
If I could turn to Steve and ask, because obviously you have that traditional business where you were also having to react to customer demand quite quickly and make your stores COVID secure and shifting kind of the clothing staff over to the food because, as Tim said, national crisis.
Now, just in case there's a problem, I have to confess we are having some on and off challenges with the volume and sound here. So I apologise in advance if I'm not getting through and somebody just message me if that's the case. These changes were generated as much as anything by the flow of information. And that meant that very often we didn't have the chance to plan around them as we would normally like to. And 2 or 3 days notice before another big surge through the operation. And it meant we've all had to reshape our models. Now, what have we seen? Well, the first thing is that we are largely about convenience. We're about fresh. We're about convenient locations, such as railway stations. And of course, we have big businesses, prepared food, such as sandwiches, all of which have seen subdued demand in the first phases of lockdown as people moved into groceries, into preparing their own food, and of course, less travelwear. Our colleagues hugely flexible. 4,500 colleagues moved from cafes into our food halls literally overnight. And what's been good as an exercise is we can see just how flexible the operation has become. We have got 27,000 colleagues on furlough. The clothing business came to a halt. I mean, the first week, it's no secret, we were 86% down on the year on our clothing business in stores. And whilst we've seen a good recovery online, our store business even today is not back to levels it was pre-COVID. The other key thing is that operations and the way customers shop is very different. We've gone back almost 10 years from quick small baskets to one big shop. And of course, that changed from store-based shopping to online, whether it be groceries or it be clothing has been marked. So if ever it was the right time to prove that we'd made the right strategic decision to partner with Ocado, who are the best at this in the market, then now was that moment. What else? Well, in the first days, we had sickness of about 20% to 25%. We now operate pretty much on a volunteer basis, and our sickness is less than 3%. I think it's interesting. We measure 78,000 colleagues, most of the frontline. I mean, we've only had just over 130 cases of COVID, which probably tells you that shopping is actually relatively straightforward and safe with the operations that are in place. We have seen that colleagues are capable of working from home in a different way, and everybody around this call will have seen it. We've got 3,500 people in our office, not in London, and IT has stood up fantastically well and operates a full-blown food business without anybody being in the office. I think today Stuart's got 10 people in downstairs. And then on top of that, a different way of working without having to involve so many people in meetings, make decisions faster. And there really is a change to how we're doing business.
This is a crisis at the moment, and the situations that we've seen are kind of customers reacting to a crisis. So do you think that this, I mean, maybe if we go to Tim again, this is a long-term habit? I mean, or do you think that actually once shops are back open and people feel comfortable to go back to the supermarkets, you'll see that drop-off happen?
So actually, we definitely think that the world's changed here, and for a number of reasons. The first one is obviously a lot of new people have tried online, and we know historically that once they try it and go through 3 to 5 shops, they tend to stay online. Okay. And we also know from surveys in markets that were ahead of us, like China, that the online trend has continued. And I think that, you know, if we look at other ways that people are trying to minimize their infection risk, whether that's, you know, taking private cars rather than public transport, or, you know, executives that might be taking private jets rather than commercial jets, these type of things cost a lot of money to go for the hygienic, the less risk method. But staying at home and getting your grocery shopping delivered by Ocado versus going to Sainsbury's, it's the same price. There's a token delivery fee. Our average delivery fee last year was about £1.10. And so you can enjoy the benefit of that service and lower your risk without spending more money. And I think that everybody in the country and elsewhere has become more aware of how viruses transmit and where they're taking that risk. And although many of us are keen to take a bit more risk and get our lives back more to normal, the question is, where do you want to spend that? Do you want to spend that seeing your friends or following your favorite sports team, or you know, doing some exciting adventure? Or do you want to spend it going to get your grocery shopping down at Tesco's? Yeah. And so we think that this trend is going to be here to stay. And we and Steve and the board that runs Ocado Retail for us, looking at how rapidly we can build new facilities to accelerate our growth in the long term.
And Vishy, you did the fundraising recently to kind of accelerate that and meet that demand from other retailers who've been wanting that and wanting to meet that huge demand. But just before we joined this, we had a bit of a discussion about the flexibility of the store pick model versus your robotic warehouse, because we know that some of the supermarkets have been able to quickly double the amount of delivery slots that they've offered, whereas Ocado, and they still haven't been able to meet capacity as well. But there has been a bit of that question over where is the best flexibility to meet demand, and you had a couple of interesting points that I thought you could.
Yeah, look, Ashley, on the platform that we provide to our clients, they can use store pick software that we've written. They can, use dark stores or manual warehouses, small robotic facilities, medium and large ones. So we offer them the full range, and we see there's a different, for different events, there's the right solution. Now, store pick is good in remote areas where you can't justify building a warehouse because of volume. Store pick is also good if you want to set something up for a short amount of time. And store pick is also good if you want to surge it suddenly because you just throw people at it. And we have 2 of our existing customers live with store pick, and some that are imminently going to go live. But of the ones that are already live, the platform for us from the beginning of June to the end of May grew, I think, by 500 and something %. So yes, you can scale it up very rapidly. The problem is the long-term sustainable economics aren't there. And so the problem is you've got all the costs of operating the store, plus the cost of picking the items in store, plus the cost of delivering to them to their home. And that means that it is a cost plus model, and you need to charge a 10 plus or so % premium on the growth, or 10 to 15% premium on the order compared to what you would do if the customer went and bought it themselves. Okay. Whereas actually, you know, with the automated warehouses that we also build for our clients, and that we Steve and I we have in Ocado Retail, you know, that business can generate significant positive cash, charging kind of a 1% premium rather than a 10 or 15% premium. Yeah. So the short-term answer is store pick, if you've got the right stores, will enable you to capture some customers and then migrate them into automated warehouses over time.
Okay. And Steve, I mean, you've been asked for years before that when M&S is going to go online with groceries, you know, and it's taken a while. So why did you pick Ocado? What took so long, and why did you feel like that was the best one? Because since the crisis, we've also had a delivery service. Was that not on the table before? Was that just not scalable? I mean, can you help us out in terms of thinking behind it?
So let me just do Deliveroo for a minute, right? Deliveroo is a short-term moment for us where we're trying to support all the initiatives that are involved in feeding the nation. We've all had requests from the government to make sure we get to as many self-isolating people as possible. That's not the long-term plan. Our plan is a partnership, which is with Ocado. And ultimately, the Zoom technology that Tim and the team have developed for Ocado and into Ocado Retail is how we see all of that going. So this is a moment in time, and as we get to the autumn, that phases out once it's live with Ocado.
And sorry, for people who might not be familiar, the Zoom technology, it's like the speedy service, isn't it? It's the
in West London that we're looking at building a second one at the moment, but our average time from order to delivery pre-COVID was about 30 minutes. Okay. But unusually for a convenience offering, kind of a 10 to 15,000 range rather than a 1,000 to 1,500 products you get in a convenience store. So you know, we do same day in the main offering, but that would be ordering early, you know, ordering morning, delivery late afternoon. Zoom could be, you know, order right now at 5:20 and have it here at 5:50.
We can get the M&S cans of G&T within the hour, should we need it.
I found this form could have delivered one to everybody.
I'll be honest, we all know what I'm going to be doing afterwards. But Steve, in terms of the thinking behind Ocado, what was it that you needed? I mean, because when you announced the deal, it was Ocado, we all knew about their robotic warehouses, but it was just at the nascent start of Zoom being talked about as well. Was that kind of the key decider of it? And I mean, why did you think now, I say now, last year when you announced the deal, but come September was the time to do it?
I mean, Tim will tell you the story in a minute. That, you know, he's taken him 19 years to get us to listen, and I think that's probably the case. In 2009, I think I'd said as the retail online director that M&S will go online with food. I don't know how and I don't know when. And that view, you know, has been part of my thinking for more than 10 years. The issue being that we looked at a number of models, particularly around store pick, and particularly in like our basket, which is, you know, lots and lots of smaller baskets, convenience-based offer. And we could not see a way of making this work from a store pick basis. I actually tried it several years ago in an unlisted way, but it also proved that that we could not make it work financially. We believe that the best technology in the world by far, the best customer service in the world by far, and the complementary offer and ethos was Ocado. And then we started conversations with Tim, and I'm delighted that we got to a point in February where we now own half of Ocado Retail, which gives us a fully aligned strategic view of what it is we want to do.
Okay. And in terms of kind of the future of that partnership, obviously it kicks off in September, and that's when Waitrose switches out to M&S. But where can you see this going? I mean, in terms of the technology that you'll be having from Ocado, how will that be shaping the modern M&S customer as well?
Well, we know that our customers have been shopping online for food. We know they spend about 3 billion online for food in the UK market, but only about 400 million of that is with Ocado. And that's frankly because they want to add M&S food to other grocery items. Now, when M&S goes live in September, we have the opportunity to join that together alongside the other existing Ocado customers. The reason Tim and I are both looking actively for more capacity is this is a unique proposition in the UK, and we think transforms the UK food market. M&S merchandise has never been available in this way before, with a fantastic extended offer that Ocado have. What's not to like about it?
And the extra capacity that you'll be able to get, because you'll be able to plug in the stores to that, or you'll be able to and use the store pick technology to help fulfill.
No. I mean, the key thing is over a period of time, and there's a 5-year plan onwards. We intend to, and Tim will talk more about this. Ocado Group will continue to provide CFCs around the country with Ocado technology, which enables us to extend the reach of the business, as well as onboarding more customers, both from M&S and elsewhere.
Okay.
So actually next year in 21, we've got 3 new facilities going live, one in Bristol, one in Purfleet and one in Andover.
Yeah.
So that will, give us a significant increase in capacity. And then obviously beyond that, we're looking at the moment about where we go beyond that, as well as incremental Zoom sites. So the business has grown, very significantly during this COVID period. And as I said before, we've been doing 40% type of numbers that we've been reporting in terms of year-on-year growth, but there's a lot of growth to come.
Mm. And I mean, during this, what have you seen? Because you've been very at the forefront of reacting to how customers are wanting to be shopping and fulfilling those kind of demands. So what are you seeing? I mean, you talked slightly about kind of visual recognition technology. I mean, where do you think you're going to have to go next, or where are you going to go next in order to deal with this modern consumer?
Well, so actually it's both the modern consumer and it's the COVID related risks. So we're very lucky that the fundamental basis of these automated facilities that we built actually have people working in a socially isolated way. But as this becomes more mainstream, obviously we need more people to work in the business. We want to make those people more productive. So, we are at the forefront of introducing robotic pick using advanced vision systems and stuff like that. So we have 3 picking cells live in our facility in Erith now, as opposed to 0 a year ago. And so over time, we see that increasing in its capacity. And so slowly, we can make each of the people in the teams more and more productive, which means that this method of shopping will become cheaper than going to a supermarket. And therefore, at some point, this is going to, it's gone from 7% of the market to 13% of the market. It will go to 20 or 30% of the market, at which point in time, you'll see a more rapid shift to be the mainstream distribution of groceries for the kind of main shop will move online. Now, I think that there'll still be shops for a long time in places that are very convenient. Steve was talking about his railway station shops, for example. But, I think that over time, as it becomes more efficient, therefore the cost domination improves, the price to consumer is better, and it will become the mainstream distribution. And it's non-virus transmitting. And not just for the customers at home, but even for the staff inside the business.
Okay. I mean, when you said you think that it can get to 20% of the market, what's your latest time horizon for that? I mean, because it's growing in 12 weeks, but surely that level of growth can't be sustainable.
Actually, I think that the challenge at the moment isn't whether we can sustain where we are now. The challenge at the moment is that everybody's still got more demand than they can service. So if all the supermarkets stood up to the plate, and if we were also able to double our capacity tomorrow, we would go over 20% of the market. The demand is there. And I think that some of the consumers just haven't realized how convenient this is. And, the fact that there are better things to do with your time, and there are better ways to spend your risk, to the amount of face-to-face interaction that you want. Where do you want to do that? Do you want to go to the pub and drink with your friends and meet interesting people, or do you want to pass people in the aisle at Tesco's? Yeah. And so we just think that this is going to grow as fast as the industry builds capacity. So at the moment, we're building, as I say, 3 new warehouses that on average are smaller than the 3 we've already got, but nevertheless, we're building a significant increment of new capacity, and then we'll build more behind that, and we'll try and grow as fast as we can.
Okay. I mean, in terms of the joy of shopping, I mean, there is something to be said about, and people had talked about the Waitrose shopper enjoying kind of going to the shops. I mean, Steve, are you slightly concerned that, you know, people aren't going to be enjoying the shopping experience as much as they did before during all of these online shifts?
Well, look, I think there's a question of time here, time and place. Right now, I don't think anyone's enjoying going to anywhere and queuing up to do a grocery shop, particularly. And you know, it feels like a chore, which is why you're seeing single baskets, you know, single trolleys come through as opposed to lots and lots of shops. There isn't very much opportunity for social interaction, which is a really important part of shopping, particularly in clothing. And as Tim just said, you know, those that weren't trying online shopping have just experienced just how convenient it really is, especially again with Ocado, who are so reliable at delivery on time in full. Now, will some people come back to store? Of course they will. And one of the key things here, and a key thing for M&S, is we are not market players with 21% market share. Both, you know, Tim and I have relatively small market shares, but there is a case of 1 equals 1 equals 3. We do believe by exposing, you know, the 21 million customers that M&S has regularly online to the Ocado proposition is additive. And we think that as people start to see more of the M&S range as well, in comparison to Waitrose specifically, and just how good our prices are in comparison to Waitrose, which most people don't get, that we'll see continued store traffic, albeit in a different shape, and a growing business with Ocado. And as Tim said, you know, as that stretches to about 20% of the market, we think we can grow market share in total for the M&S brand.
Okay. And in terms of that kind of next step on for the M&S and Ocado relationship, do you think that you're going to be kind of, obviously you've got the CFCs coming up, but what else are you going to be kind of trialing together? Is there anything that you can say about kind of the innovations that you'll be kind of sharing together?
I mean, look,
Well,
the one thing go on, Steve.
I was going to say the first thing we've already talked about is the fact that Tim has online picking, store-based picking technology, and what we're having a look at very carefully is how deployable that is, while there is still this online demand which we can't fulfil necessarily straight from a CFC. So I mean, that's the first and easy example. But Tim's got a huge box of tricks up there.
Yeah, I was going to say, what else?
Well, actually, you know, the thing with these huge box of tricks is you usually don't like to announce them until you do them. But I think, you know, actually, you've already focused on what the biggest thing for us right now in the retail space is that on September the 1st, we're going to take 4,500 lines out that currently are branded Waitrose and replace them with 6,500 M&S lines that we know from our customer research, our customers are super excited about. And so, you know, that's quite a big logistics exercise, as you can imagine. And so we're very focused on getting it absolutely right. And then on being able to grow capacity, because right now that is the critical thing, to be able to grow more than the 40% year on year that we've grown. And as Steve says, we can look at things using other tricks that are already in our portfolio. And as you mentioned, you know, as a business, Ocado Group just added another £1 billion to its balance sheet to give us over £2 billion of financial headroom to be able to grow. So, you know, we'll work to do the best job that we can. And
I mean, do you think that there was something about customers not understanding how small a part of the online shopping market there was of the total food market? You know, that it only sat at 7%. So you couldn't react to this huge spike in demand overnight.
I think that's absolutely right. And it is extraordinary to see some of the passion of some of the customers, some of which has come out in the wrong way. So I have had my life threatened. I've had people tell me that they hope that I die and my family dies because they can't get access to slots, which obviously isn't hugely pleasant to be on the receiving end of, but does show you the strength of passion and feeling about they do not want to go to a supermarket. They want the food delivered to their door by us. And then we also got the amazing number of customers who write saying, I've been put on the priority list by Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Asda and Waitrose, and I demand going on yours. And I'm thinking, well, you've got good access there to a lot of supermarkets, but there's clearly something that we do that you want, because you're basically telling me that's not good enough. So, you know, what we know is that we have asked customers that aren't in, if you want us to tell you when you can come in, you know, put your name and an email address and details down here. And we know that that is a giant pool of customers that right now is bigger than the group we have shopping on us. So we know right now, if we just wrote to them all, we could double our size tomorrow and keep going. And so, we think the world's fundamentally changed. We think this has just accelerated a channel shift and just brought it much, much, much faster. And so it's our job to try and work out how to satisfy it as quickly as we can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. I think we've got some questions coming in now, and if people want to kind of log their questions, and I think people are interested in online delivery, but hopefully no death threats about delivery slots, because let's face it, that's not what we want. But if we open up with, we've got a question from Savash Kumar about demand planning changing in the COVID world. Savash.
Yes, hi. The question I have is, we have seen a lot of shift in consumer preferences in the post-COVID world. Obviously, channel shift is one of the big ones, which you're talking about during this meeting. How exactly your process for demand planning have changed from what you were doing before to now, both in the short term, obviously there's a crisis moment, and in the longer term?
Sure. Look, the kind of thing that was extremely difficult was, whilst we've been managing with this massive amount of demand, we obviously were also managing with team members and people signing themselves off for suspected COVID infections and stuff. So we've had absence of 25 to 30% in some areas, whilst managing 40% growth. And so the planning piece is much harder than normal, because normally, we've got a load of algorithms that really understand what's going on, and they predict the size of the basket each day going forward, and they predict the amount of staff that we're going to need each day going forward. And if we need 100, whether we should ask for 105 or 110 based on absence in March on a Wednesday type of thing. So we've created incredible data from patterns to understand, and everything just got thrown up in the air. And so, you couldn't predict whether you could do the maximum volume you wanted to do next Wednesday, because you weren't sure how many of your staff were going to go sick between now and Wednesday. And so that just meant that we've had a very, very live and dynamic planning process going on, where we're now pretty much sold out for over 3 weeks that we show to our customers. And we're 85+% sold out 21 days out from now. But then we hold a bit of it back till the very short term before the end day, and then look at the staff numbers and the availability of stock and everything else, and then release the last part, and we know it sells incredibly quickly. So there's a kind of a more dynamic component to it, but also a riskier component, because we've made further long-dated commitments than we're used to making, other than at Christmas. And so also the accuracy of the supplier inbound has deteriorated. So, normally if we ordered 1,000 of a certain product, then 1,000, we'd expect 1,000 to turn up almost all the time. And now sometimes 500 will turn up, or 800 will turn up. And if we've pre-sold them to customers, we have to deal with difference there. And so it has definitely become a more complex planning exercise.
Okay, Grant, thanks for that. And now if we turn to a question from Dan Abrahams. Dan, are you ready to go?
Hi. I had a couple, actually. I guess one for Tim. We've obviously talked a lot about UK expansion, but just wondered how that kind of rate of change in capacity growth compared to the kind of demand pull that you're seeing from your international partners. And then I had another one for Steve, probably more. I'm just wondering if you could use Ocado's capabilities for your non-food range. Obviously, kind of returns on clothing being a big difference with grocery, and what changes might need to be made to Ocado's capabilities for you to consider it for non-food.
So Dan, we obviously are in constant contact with our clients as well as potential clients internationally. And I think that the type of changes in demand level that we've seen in the UK has been a worldwide phenomenon. So, every market that we know in the world's had almost unlimited demand for online grocery. There are markets, for example, where the government basically effectively commandeered all the capacity and said, we're going to tell you who we want you to give it to. So you can't give it to a normal customer. It's just, you're going to pool it with your competitor, and we're going to tell you who needs it. And there are markets that, you know, as I say, everybody's going faster. And everywhere where we're working with our international clients, where they've got a facility live, for example, and, you know, they were going to turn it on at a certain volume and stay there, that was their first year's trajectory, they're already asking us for 50 or 100% more capacity as quickly as we can give it to them. So everybody's seeing faster growth and more appetite. And I've not spoken to anybody who doesn't believe that 5 years out, the size of the online grocery market in their country is going to be materially bigger than they had believed it would be in January. So I think everybody is clear that the market is going to grow and grow much faster.
And Dan, sorry, I think you had another question for Steve, right?
Yeah, shall I pick that up? It relates to the difference between clothing and food retail online, and how returns are managed, and whether or not we can use the Ocado capabilities for M&S non-foods. And the fact is we are. As we go live in September, there'll be circa 1,600 SKUs which will be catalogued by Ocado Retail. That's an increase from where we are today, and a more cohesive set of ranges. But the primary objective at the moment, though, is to make sure that the capacity is used for food. Where that develops to in the future, we'll see. But we must make sure that the demand for food is fulfilled, and therefore the offer on Ocado Retail from a clothing and general merchandise point of view is one really of relatively basic merchandise, which is absolutely right, and is absolutely right for the way that customer is shopping at the moment, and is additive to that basket rather than a complete clothing shop.
But you are going to be able to get a few items of clothing items, I think you said last time.
Yeah, 1,600 SKUs. But you know, it's a lot of, there's quite a bit of homeware in that. There's also some basics, underwear, that sort of thing. You know, what we're not talking about is a full-blown clothing range. You know, that's not how the model's set up at the moment. It's not how Ocado Retail is really focused, and how that develops. We don't know yet. But the focus has got to be on getting the proposition live on September the 1st, as Tim said.
Okay. And then I think we've got another question. I think you sort of tackled this, but one from Harry Briggs saying he's interested in terms of view on retail giants can survive longer term as online eats away. Harry, do you want to ask Tim a bit more on that? I think it's quite interesting.
Look, I guess I've had a view for a while that as online eats away, you know, a couple of % a year at the traditional retail market, at some point they all begin to reach scale where, you know, it just doesn't make sense to keep all these stores open anymore. I'm just interested in Tim's view on who survives long term out of the Costco's, the Tesco's, the other big retailers, and also actually on your views on Instacart and whether that model is long-term sustainable.
So Harry, two different questions there, both great ones. The issue with bricks and mortar is that incremental sales into a bricks and mortar store, as I'm sure Steve could explain better, are highly profitable. But when they come back out, they're highly unprofitable, and you lose more than you gain when they went in, because you built up some, you know, you add an extra till, you gave the manager a bonus because you were making more money or something. So, you know, if you take 20% of the sales or 25% out of the sales of the majority of supermarkets in the UK, you'll turn them from cash generating to cash negative. And so, you know, who survives is who works out how to service that online demand profitably, and really profitably, not bullshit profitably, where you're just playing, you know, incremental cost games and trying to argue that, well, that customer also does this with me and I'm going to attribute some of the profit of that to the online business because if I don't serve it, I'll lose it. And so we've seen a lot of bullshit profitability stories in our space over time. And, you know, when the current and kind of retiring management team took over at Tesco's, they kind of rebased and said, well, actually our online business that the last management team was said was profitable isn't profitable. And today they're saying the economics have improved a bit, but we hope that we can start to charge the customer more for it, and that will make it more sustainable, but still not as profitable as a store. If that's the best you can do, you've got a problem. So, you know, the point about what we do as a technology business and what we provide to our clients, which includes the retail joint venture we have with Steve, is to create a model where you can serve the client online charging a token delivery fee and deliver better economics than you ever made running a hypermarket. And only people that can do that will survive in the long term. Your next question was about Instacart, which is a crowdsourced version of Store Pick in the US predominantly, but also I think in Canada. And the issue there is, again, it's a great model to scale up enormously quickly. And it's a great model where clients are willing to spend a 20 to 30% premium on their $130 basket or something. Because the store is incurring all the costs the store was incurring. Then Instacart is sending somebody in to do a single pick, the most inefficient pick in the store for you, and then driving it in an individual car back to your house. And the advantage it has is that it can be very immediate, because if I'm going to pay someone to do it, they might as well do it now. The disadvantage is it's at a massive premium. Now, in a $1 trillion market, there may have been an underlying 5 to 10, 0.5 to 1% of the market that was willing to pay that premium when there wasn't a service like the one that we have in the UK and that our clients are building internationally and in the US with Kroger was available. There are people who will pay that premium. The minute they can get the service without the premium, it's bye-bye Instacart. And so, in COVID times, I think they scaled up to a run rate of 35 or so billion or more, and every operator in the US scaled up. But there isn't an operator there at the moment that delivers a reliable, fresh, quality service at a token charge over going to the hypermarket. And I think when there is, the Instacart model dies.
Okay, and then we've got a question, and excuse if this is pronunciation, who's I thought made an interesting question about sharing capacity in crisis times. Drew, are you there? And apologies if that's.
Hi, Drew, that's correct. Yeah. No, I was just wondering if there is any talk around sharing the capacity for future response to pandemic across retailers, so checkout cards and stock and things like that.
So look, we all sold all the stock that we had. So there was no point in kind of trying to pull toilet paper because everybody was selling every bit of toilet paper that they had. And I think that there was talk about if, within the store operators, there was talk about that if, for example, there was talk on the DEFRA calls with the government that if staffing levels got so bad that you couldn't run a single shop, it may be better for one retailer to run the shop in one town and consolidate their staff there and have one of their kind of competitors run it in the other town. And they, the government might be able to relax competition law and allow that type of thing to happen. From an online perspective, we have 2 facilities today that are built to serve 2 retailers, to serve Ocado Retail and to serve Morrison. So there's an element of sharing in the model already, but there would have been no advantage to us. There was nothing that we had that Sainsbury's or Tesco's kind of needed to do more volume or vice versa. So what we did do though, is we all worked together with DEFRA in terms of making sure that all the people that they put on the shielded vulnerable list that needed help got help from somebody. So the idea from them was very clear, was that if you recognize this person as your customer, whether that's a store customer, an online customer, or whatever it is customer, they're now on a list that means we want you to deliver to their home. And so, we kind of effectively, through that means, divided up that list to make sure that we, that everybody that needed help should have got it.
Steve, is there anything that you wanted to add on that? I mean, the competition.
No, the Tim's point, competition law was still in existence and still being enforced, and we should learn, remember, go back to things like the milk crisis that retailers were prosecuted afterwards for some collaboration. However, that primarily is around opening hours and any price and availability. Look, we are all in competition, but I have to tell you, in the crisis, everybody came together, and I think my opening comment was about how the world of retail at every level did a fantastic job, and there was no difference here. Where we did have capacity in things like warehouses and trucks, people did move around, and that was encouraged by DEFRA. But as Tim said, when it came to the front end commercial, the only time there will be that level of real collaboration, I think, is if we fall into civil emergency. And frankly, the priority is then just feeding the nation, full stop. But in the meantime, we have continued to work alongside them and DEFRA in the same way that Tim and his team have. Because this is uncharted territory, and we need to make sure we're doing the right thing.
And I suppose you also had the slight difference in that you were able to shift your own staff across from clothing to to the food side of things as well. So you were able to kind of almost adapt in that way in terms of different capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we did, and one of the things we haven't had to do as a business is go and recruit a lot of people for food. We've used our own colleagues wherever necessary, and we've made sure that our operations stayed whole throughout. But again, you know, we did look at initially in conjunction whether or not we would need to support other retailers if it got that bad, and the view was no, we didn't. So yeah, I'm pleased to say M&S people have remained M&S people in their retail families.
I'm sure they're happy. And Brent has just put, I think, I mean, outside of the crisis times and partnerships done in emergency, I mean, you have been pushing a little bit more about partnerships as well through M&S. And I'm thinking about, you know, your kind of visual fit technology and things like that you've been doing through the forum. But, you know, what kind of other partnerships are you looking for?
Well, look, I mean, exactly as you've just said. I mean, we started a couple of years ago with founders. We think it's a really important part of what we are doing to try and get M&S to become a digital-first retailer in every way. What am I looking for now? Well, we'll have a look at anything, frankly, but the priority has got to be those things that respond differently to the changing customer environment. Fit technology is a really big thing for us. We've led the way in fit in the UK. You know, we're the #1 retailer of bras, 37% market share, and yet it's unlikely in the short term that I'm going to be able to fit bras in the way we used to. What's the new technology behind that? Fitting rooms. The government has kindly said that all merchandise tried on a fitting room has got to be isolated for 48 hours. It's like an economic disaster for a clothing retailer to have half their stock backstage. How do we solve for those things? But and of course, the demand conversation was a really interesting thing. When you are dealing with the levels of change, algorithms that work quickly and can work over different locations are really key. And supply of goods has been very spiky. And anything we can do to increase our capability in that area is always good news.
So anything that can kind of help in the supply chain side of things.
And the forecasting sense, yeah. And then look, the other thing is just generally robotics. I mean, we love what Tim's done, but again, cleaning robotics, that sort of thing in stores, anything that looks after stock without touch, all really of the moment.
Okay, and Tim, how about you? I know that you know you use a partnership or a contract with a robotics firm as well. Anything about you that you think that you might need to expand in terms of partnerships, or can Ocado do everything in-house now? I don't know.
Well, we do a lot in-house. Actually, we do work with people around the world because we're now in you know, dozen plus construction sites around the world, and so obviously that's part of our challenge at the moment, is that we can't travel around the sites that we're building. So we're more reliant on our local partners in those markets than we were before. And you know, we've also had some supply chain challenges that we've overcome as well. And so actually, we've been surprised at how good the global supply chain has been at moving parts around that we have manufactured in different places and getting to other countries. It's actually been remarkably efficient after a couple of very early hiccups with stuff coming out of China and a little bit coming out of Italy. But no, I don't think it's driving us to any more partnerships, particularly at the moment. Although obviously we've got a lot of client conversations going on around who we might partner with in terms of selling our solutions to. But in terms of running our business, I think, you know, we are increasing our own pace of innovation. So, you know, we've kind of put another headcount allocation to grow our technology team from 2,000 people to 2,200 people by the end of the year, if we can hire them all, just in terms of innovating faster. So you know, so we're up to that, but there's nothing else very specific at the moment that we're looking at.
And I think probably last question, but actually a good one from Brent, who actually says, apart from yourselves, which other companies do you think are getting the digital transformation right?
I mean, I would turn that question around and ask you, Ashley. You're the one who speaks to them all the time.
No. That's why I'm in this questionnaire seat.
Look, I think that you know, as Steve was saying before as well, you know, leases aren't forever, and so it's looking at who is not just worrying about keeping the sale. It's who is worrying about the fact that when that sale is the main part of their business, they've got a profitable business. So I don't want to go into specific names out there, but I think too many people are hanging their hat on, you know, I can throw people at this problem, and, you know, it's okay that my original business is profitable. So you've seen announcements out of, for example, you know, the leading UK listed grocery retailers, Tesco's and Sainsbury's, both saying that despite hundreds of millions of subsidies in terms of you know, business rates from the government, they're not expecting to make more money this year. And one of the largest reasons given is the incremental costs of all this online business. That does not suggest a long-term sustainable winner, because you can't expect the government to subsidize it every single year. So, you know, it's a question of who do you see doing it well, both in terms of, you've got to do it well from the customer perspective, of course, to actually have the demand in the customer business, but you've got to do it from a sustainable, profitable way. So I just think that you've got to look yourselves and look at both sides of the equation there.
Okay, and Steve, rapid fire answer. Anybody else that you look at enviously about getting their digital transformation right?
Yeah, but I'm going to say there are some really good players, you know, States, you know, Kroger's is an interesting one, isn't it? But I think there are aspects where we all get it very right and aspects where we've not all moved on. The key thing is that the technical and digital advances in retailing are not going to go away. They're not going to go backwards. And therefore, the big thing for all of us is to make sure we're adopting models and adopting technology, which is agile at one end for operations, but the other end has got proven long-term profitability. And that's why, again, circling the conversation, that's why we were so attracted and so, you know, pleased to partner with Ocado, because we believe that technology is the right technology for the long-term future.
And so do you think for the future there has to be a sort of hybrid of the existing model and online, or? Well,
I've seen that chat come up, and, you know, the new world is a hybrid of convenient supermarket stores and then robotic fulfillment, whether it's in the store or elsewhere, but certainly elsewhere. Yeah, that looks like a bit like Marks and Spencer and Ocado, doesn't it?
That's very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for everybody for logging in and joining us for what I hope you think has been quite an interesting discussion. It's definitely touched on quite a few things in these crisis times. I think, I don't know, Tim or Steve, if you wanted to have any closing words. I thought that was quite a nice payoff, Steve, but anything else?
I mean, I'd just say thanks to everyone for joining. And as we said, we think this is enormously interesting times. Hopefully you were already existing loyal customers, so you've been getting the slots that you need at home for those of you in the UK. Stay safe. And, you know, we do think there's a massive transformation ahead of us. And we're excited about the joint venture we have with M&S, but we're excited about the global growth that we're going to see.
And anything from Steve? Yeah.
Yeah, look, I echo that. These are changing times. There is going to be a new normal, and we don't quite know exactly what that's going to be. But as I said a minute ago, you know, the world has changed forever. Making sure you've got an advanced and digital fulfillment model is going to be key. And I think that's where we are. But look, thank you very much indeed for your time and taking the time to give us such interesting questions.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure you'll be all logging in next time as well. Cheers.
Thanks, Ashley.
Bye-bye.